It has taken me about 100 cuts of this introduction to get this done, and I'll tell you why. This interview with Amy is unbelievably hard-hitting. It is the most raw and honest depiction of what it's like to be a child patient in the hospital. She brings up emotions and deep experiences that put me straight back into my own experiences that were very traumatic in hospital as a child. So if you also have these experiences, please be aware before you watch this interview that it does go really deep and raw. And if you are a parent of a child who is in hospital right now, this is the interview for you to watch so you can understand a little bit more about how your child could be experiencing their hospital experience. It is unbelievably raw and honest, and I feel so privileged to have been able to do this interview with Amy. But please watch knowing that it is heartbreaking and hard-hitting.
Awesome. It would be awesome just to kind of get a little bit of background and a little bit of your story of kind of how you came to have all of these struggles because of your surgeries and everything when you were a kid and what happened to you.
Yeah, sure. So when I was a child, I think I was about 7 or 8, there was a house fire in my back garden. Well, it wasn't really a house fire. It was in the back garden. And it was because there were like lots and lots of ant nests everywhere. I used to really freak out because the ants would like maybe bite me, or they would just be flying around in the air. So I used to be really, really scared. So I used to always complain to my parents, I'd scream. I'd be like, ah, like a little girl. One day he just decided that he was going to get the petrol out of the shed and pour petrol over the ant's nest. And he did that, and I was just watching from afar, kind of like excited to see, what is Daddy going to do here? Like, he's going to get rid of the ants, yay, And I was with my older brother, and he was telling me like, stand back, And I was kind of a bit like, no, like, I'm going to, like, don't tell me what to do, sort of thing. But I wasn't like walking forward. I was just like arguing a little bit with my brother and trying to like take one more step in front of him. And Dad put the petrol can away on the other side of the garden, but the lid was off. But it was a very hot day, so when he lit the nest to like burn the ants, I think what happened is the fumes had like made the flames travel. So they traveled in the air to the petrol can, and the petrol can blew up. So there was a big explosion of fire, and one of those sparks went onto my dress that I was wearing. I was wearing like a pretty summer dress, and my whole body went up in flames. So I was on fire, and I was screaming. My mum came running out. My dad and my brother were trying to like get the flames off me. So there was this big panic. My dad got the hose and like tried to hose me down, and he was like, I remember that he took my hands and was like swinging me around to try and stop the flames. And my mum sort of came through. I don't really remember all the small detail, but I do remember just her stripping me down, picking me up, putting me straight in the bath. She poured cold water into the bath, and then she called the ambulance. And from that moment, I was praying to God. I was praying to God for my life. Yeah, so I was extremely scared. Yeah, I was scared. Thought that I was going to die. Sorry, I'm getting very emotional.
Don't worry, you take your time.
So it's going to come out.
Take your time. And
Yeah,
just breathe, honey. Just breathe.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was praying to God, dear God, please let me live. Please let me live. And then the ambulance came. I was put in the ambulance, and I was rushed to hospital. And I was rushed to there was a big hospital where I lived called St. Peter's. That's where I was actually born as well. And I remember being taken through to a ward, and I had a blanket over me, and I remember the doctors speaking to me, you know, like they speak to a child, but I was pretty like smart as a kid. I like knew what was going on. Like you know, when people are talking to you like a baby and stuff, like I was a bit like, you know, you don't need to do that, guys. Like, what's going on? So there was a doctor that, you know, was, you know, and they were just being nice, you know, hello, how are you? Oh, like, you know, I like this. And, you know, just trying to be cute and nice to me. And I'm just there like petrified. And then this doctor just peeled the blanket away. And then he sort of looked at my burns and he looked up at another doctor and he just shook his head like that. And as a child, you absorb body language more than I think words sometimes. And I was really receptive to that. And that was when dread sort of like went over me, like, oh, these people can't help me. So then next thing I knew, they were putting me back into the ambulance and they were rushing me up to St Mary's Hospital in London. So I'm from Surrey, which is just outside London. So, and we never used to go into London. Like London was like a mission away, even though, you know, it's the UK, it's small and we're not too far from London. We just never went into the city. It wasn't like that. So here I am being rushed into the like London, St Mary's Hospital. And then from there, I was taken to a special burns unit. I think originally I was put into a room where they looked at my burns and they tried to sort of maybe clean them or something like that. And I just remember lots and lots of pain. I remember feeling, I could smell the smoke on me, my eyelashes, my hair, my eyebrows, everything was syringed, like all syringed up. And that smell of burnt hair was like, I could smell it on my body. And also like, you know, my skin was burnt, all my skin was burnt down, you know, to the flesh. So yeah, it was really, really invasive. So then from there, they took me to a, you know, like a ward where there was other young children that had been burnt. It was quite a big room and, you know, you had a curtain around, you had your privacy. And then from there, my parents, they stayed with me. I think especially my mum, because my brother was being looked after by my dad, I think. And then my mum just slept at the hospital and stayed with me by my side throughout everything. And then I was being told that I would need to have surgery. I'd need to have skin grafts on my body. So I remember my mum trying to clearly explain that to me as a child, what's happening. And it's like, you don't want this to happen, but you have no choice. So yeah, lots of changes going very, very suddenly, and lots of disruption to, like, you know, your body, you know.
Do you ever feel like it was being out of your control? Like
Oh,
stuff was really happening to you and you couldn't control it?
yeah. So that it was like, first of all, the accident was a freak accident. It wasn't really anyone's fault. It was no one's fault. I mean, me as a child, you know, I wish I wasn't so dramatic and scared of these ants, you know. Maybe if I stepped back and listened to my brother a little bit, and maybe if I had not taken that one step forward, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it was a real freak accident. I think one of the reasons why I don't talk about this as much is because I love my family so much, and I would never, ever want any of my parents to feel responsible or guilty or feel like it's their fault, because it wasn't. They did everything that they could. They saved me. Yeah. They saved me and God saved me. So I feel very, very, you know, lucky and protected. And but as a child at the time, it was very emotional, and I was very angry. I was very angry inside. You know, why did this happen to me? You know, I didn't like any of it. I didn't like being in the hospital. I was just so unhappy, and I went down depression from a very young age as a child from that moment. I was really, really depressed after that, because like you said, it's out of your control, and you know that everyone there is trying to help you, but it's all happening so fast and you haven't even caught up with what's even happened to you. So what then I remember happened was I kept on having to go and have these baths where the nurses would clean my wounds and put new bandages on, and that was really painful, trying to peel off the bandage off of my skin. and trying to replace it, and all the gels and stuff and all of that. I remember there was this yellow looking gel that went over my skin, and it was all creams and stuff to help protect and heal it. But I remember the smell, I remember the look, and I remember the bandages, and there were layers. They would put this mesh thing on, and there was a layer of this thing, and then this one, and then it was bandaged up, and then when they take it off, it was just this awful feeling of them removing and then replacing with fresh wounds. It was just a roller coaster every time. And I remember like not wanting to get naked in front of these people I didn't know. You know, I was like, I don't want to get in a bath and be bathed by somebody. I didn't want them to see my body. I felt so it was just so invasive of my body. And everyone was very kind and lovely and nice, but I really resisted it. I was like, just in total denial. This cannot be happening to me. This is not happening, but it is. So it was really a living nightmare, a real living nightmare for me. And then I got told a date for surgery. And I think that, again, talking about this and realizing where I was at in that emotional state, I wasn't ready for that. I was not ready to be going for the surgery, even though I had lots of prep, and mum kept explaining and talking to me and getting me ready for it. I wasn't ready. So as a child, I was a really, really good child. I was a really good child, and I was really obedient and did what I was told, and I was a good girl. I was a really good girl. Like mum used to say, like, you know, you're an angel. And then when it came to me having to have this surgery, the doctors and nurses came around and they wanted me to take this medicine, which was green. I remember it was green. And this is probably the hardest part for me to talk about, because I shut down and I said, no, I'm not taking it. And I rebelled, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. And mum's there by my side saying, come on, darling, it's time to take your medicine now. We're doing the surgery. They're going to make you better. We're going to go in for the skin graft. And I also forgot to mention, so with the skin graft, what they do is they take some of your own skin off. So they shave off your skin and they place it on your scars. So I had quite a large burn on my lower leg, one on my left underarm, a small one underneath my armpit, and a tiny, tiny one on my back. The one on my back, I can't even see it. I don't even know where it is anymore, because as you grow, your skin stretches and your skin heals over other skin, and it kind of all blends in and heals quite nicely. And that's what they would mum kept telling me, is you're not going to notice this when you grow older. You don't understand. You're going to grow up and your body's going to grow and your skin's going to stretch and it's all going to blend in really well. And I didn't understand that, and I didn't accept that at the time. I was like, no. So here they are about to take me into this surgery. And oh yeah, and I'm sorry, I went off there. I remember them asking me, where do you want us to take the skin? You can either have it from your thigh, your leg, or you can have it from your bum.
That's a big decision as a child, huh?
Well, straight away, I was like,
where would you like me to skin you from?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, you're not touching my bum. You're not looking at my bum. No way. I was so like, you know, I wanted my privacy.
Yeah.
I mean, I was only 7 or 8, but I was like, no, not my bum. And I'm so glad that I said that, because, you know.
You do have a fantastic bum.
I'm so glad I said that. But yeah, so they took it from my thigh, my top thigh. And you can hardly notice it. It kind of looks like I've got a suntan, because there is a bit of a line. So when I tan in the sun, you can see a bit of a difference. So they were going to take this skin. This was the surgery where they were going to take the skin, and then they were going to stitch it onto the other body parts of me that were burnt. So here I am. I've refused to take the medicine. And then I remember the nurse trying to reason with me, trying to talk to me, trying to sweet talk me. Come on, take it, and it'll. This is what it's going to be like. It's going to be fine. And I was like, no, you're not doing it. Sorry, bye. You know, I just wasn't having it. And mum was there going, come on, darling. You know, it's time to take your medicine. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I was just completely closed up. And then the nurse ended up losing her patience with me, and she said, if you don't take this medicine, I'm going to have to force it down your throat with a syringe. And that made me even more angry. I was like, oh no, you're not. I was like, no, you're not. And I was like, you can't do that. No, not happening. So all these adult doctors and nurses were like, what do we do? And my mum was like begging me. And then the most traumatizing part here is that they ended up pinning me down on the bed. They pinned me down with my legs and my arms. And I screamed the whole hospital down, no, 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 no. And they just syringed it down my throat. And I remember the gurgle, as it's going in me. And then all of a sudden I'm out. I have the surgery, but I don't know what's going on here. But I do remember a dream I had. I had a very vivid dream that all of a sudden the whole hospital became a spaceship. This is crazy. And the spaceship went vroom, up into the atmosphere. And I went to another planet. I went somewhere else. Like, of course I was on drugs, but like, this is the dream. And I remember that the spaceship was like hovering like this in the sky. And I was just taken somewhere else, unknown, peaceful, I don't know, very alien, very confusing, not Earth, just I was somewhere else. I was with the aliens, I was gone. Then when I came back, when I was like waking up from the surgery, my mom was by my side and I was coming in and out of consciousness. And obviously there was the drugs, but because I've been dreaming that I was with aliens or I'd gone somewhere else, another planet, and I was like coming out, all I could see was my mum, like a million of my mum. So then I was like, Mum, is that you? And she was like, yeah, it's me. And I was like, you know, I thought that I thought that my mum was an alien. I thought that we were somewhere else. I was like, Mum, how many eyes have you got? Because she had like all these eyes. And she was like laughing, going, just two, darling. And I was just like going in my sleep. And then I'd wake up and I'd look at her again and I'd be like, Mum, how many noses have you got? And she was like, just one. And then I kept asking, like, tell me it's you, you know, is that you? Or are you an alien now? Like, I was so confused. And then when I finally came around, she was just like so happy to see me. And I was just, you know, okay, I'm back, I'm here, Mum's here, you know. And then from that moment, I went on a healing and recovery journey, which I think I mentioned before. I was really depressed. I had to navigate people and like going back to school, people asking questions, people staring at my bandages, wanting to know what's happened to me. I didn't know how to explain what happened to me. I didn't know how to verbalize it or vocalize it. I even struggle, as you can tell on this call, talking about it because it's not something that I talk about often. It's not that I'm afraid to talk about it. I'm okay to face these emotions, but they're deep, deep wounds that is quite frankly very, very sad and very, you know, distressing. And, you know, it's quite dark times of my life. So, you know, but for a long time, it was like I wanted to keep it a secret. I didn't want people to know. I remember asking Mum, what do I say? Mum giving me ideas of what I can say to people. And I remember friends sometimes taking the mickey, not because they were being mean, but because they were just kids and they didn't understand. And I remember laughing with them, but then going home and crying my eyes out to my mum and just, you know, having such a wall, such a defense, because I was like, I want to protect myself. I don't want to be taken the mickey out of. I don't want to be laughed at or viewed at in any kind of a way. I had such a wall around me. So for a long time, when I became a teenager, I never wore skirts or shorts. I hid my scars. Whenever there was photos or anything, I'd always stand with one leg over the other. I was just very, very conscious. But then I decided I no longer want to live in this shadow anymore. Like, I don't want to be afraid of who I am. I don't want to hide myself. I want to be unapologetically me, and the right people will love me for that. And as I leaned into that, the world responded very positively. And yeah, there were times where people go, oh, what's that? Like, not even thinking about it. I've done it myself with other people with scars. It's just human nature. You don't think before you, and there's times where I've gone, it's a scar, I don't want to talk about it, or I just say like, oh, I was burnt in a fire. And normally people go, oh, okay, and they don't ask more. You know, I'm talking about people that don't actually know me, that, you know, but yeah. And then the people that know me obviously know my story, they know what happened. I've been happy to talk, you know, a little bit further and deeper. But yeah, so that's it. Thanks for listening.
Babe, that was probably the most raw and honest account of exactly how it feels to be in hospital as a child that I've ever heard. And that's why I didn't want to say anything, because I was like, I'm right there on that table with you, with those
Yeah.
nurses and everything around you. And that was just incredible, my darling. That was
Oh, thank you.
absolutely incredible. Thank you
Thanks
so,
for,
so much for sharing that.
no worries. Thank you for, you know, creating a nice safe space for me to open up.
No problem. I just think I just let you go for it, because that was just absolutely incredible, babe. And your ability to articulate and get in touch with those I am at all with is something that I still struggle with, even though I'm doing all this. Those deeper ones that you were able to sort of articulate and be like, no, I can put myself there. It's still something that I have to work on every single day,
Yeah.
to learn how to feel those again, and
Yeah.
learn just to identify those feelings so they don't
Yeah.
overload me. So the work that you've done on yourself is just incredible. And I would love to actually just go into that a little bit, because I know that now you are a yoga teacher and you are thriving in that. It's
Thank you.
incredible. But I just wanted to touch on how you have managed to rebuild sort of like your mind and body confidence, sort of like bringing that team in. So it's not like you're not disassociated from your body and what happened. You are very much sort of aligned with your mind and body, and how that's really helped you come into your own and become this really positive ball of light like you are today.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind to say. As a young girl, I was always told, "You're so beautiful." Like, you know, all my family like gave me words of affirmation, and they always used to tell me how beautiful I was, and I felt really loved, and you know, I felt like a little princess as a little girl. You know, I felt loved and beautiful. When what happened to me, I didn't feel that anymore. I felt ugly. I felt, you know, just completely not myself. You know, not only was it physically painful to look at, my skin's all changed. You know, I've got big scars on my body, and
Did you feel like you lost some of your identity?
yeah, I did. I didn't feel like me anymore. I didn't love myself anymore, because I had all these, I guess, imperfections that that came with a lot of pain and trauma. So I hated my scars. I hated them. I hated them so much that one of my darkest times, I got a knife and I threatened to stab my scar. I was in my most depressive state as a child, and I was crying. I was in so much pain. And I hated what they did to me. I blamed my scars. I blamed this pain. And I was crying to my mum, and I was like, I hate them. I want them to go. I wasn't going to do it, but I was like this, and I was like, I'm going to stab it. And mum just took it off me, and she just held me, and, you know, she just calmed me down. And I don't know what she said, but that was probably my lowest point. And then from that moment, I realized that I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the person that I became as a result of these scars. And that wasn't an option for me. Just because I had scars doesn't mean that I'm not still Amy. Doesn't mean that, you know, it's not a representation of who I am. So it started to steal away me, the essence of who I was as a person. I wasn't angry. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't, you know, hating anyone or like myself, you know. And in that state, I remember there was one time in the hospital, I was very rude to my dad, and I'll never forget that. I never forget that, and I don't think he even knows that I'm sorry about that. But he just came to visit me with like teddies and gifts, and like came to give me love. And I was really mean. I was just like, I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to see anyone. I was just like, go away, like I didn't care, just really not me. I wasn't like that. I was a nice, kind person, and I was becoming this, I was just so hurt.
Yeah, angry.
I was angry, and I was hurting my parents. I was upsetting them, and I was being not nice, and that wasn't me. So after that moment, it wasn't an option for me to allow my scars to change who I was as a person, regardless of physical makeup or how I looked or what was on my body. This was changing who I was. It was making me in this, not this nice person to be around. And I could feel it. I could feel I was hurting people, and I didn't want to hurt anyone that I loved. So I, from that moment, had no other option but to get stronger. And I did. So I started to own it. I started to not care. I started to face my fears. My biggest fear was someone staring at me and looking at me in public in shock, like staring at my leg and being like, what's happened or whatever. And me just feeling like I want the ground to swallow me up. That was my biggest fear. So I started to just face that fear and just be like, and what? Mentally, like, someone's staring at me, I don't care. Let them. And the negative thoughts that I had around that, I spoke to my mum about it, and mum was like, they're not looking at you, Amy, because they think, oh, that's ugly, or they're just curious, and they're not looking at you in a negative way. They're looking at you in a loving way. They're wondering what's happened, and they're sending you love. So when mum let me know that the intention behind people staring or being inquisitive about how I looked was not coming from a place of like, I'm not worthy. It was actually coming from a place of like, interest and innocence. And that is not anything to run away from.
Yeah.
That's not anything to be scared of. So then from there, I eased off a bit and accepted the fact that I was going to get questions for the rest of my life. I was going to get looks. I was going to have to say what's happened to me. And I think that was part of it, was not being ready to talk about what happened to me. So as time's gone on, I've, I guess in a way, got thicker skin, excuse the pun, and become stronger, and just chosen not to make my scars change who I am as a person. And then from there, I've just learnt to love them. And by the way, I'm not afraid of ants anymore. From that moment, I think from that moment, being afraid of bugs just was nothing to me. I've never been scared of bugs ever again, because it wasn't just ants, it was spiders. It was this, bugs can crawl all over me.
I mean, bigger fears, you've got bigger things to be afraid of, it's sort of that perspective, isn't it, of like having those perspective shifts of like all of those little things you used to worry about. When something big happens, like what happened to you, just puts everything else into perspective. And I love what you just said about, especially with your mum helping you shift that perspective of just like, they're not looking at you like that, or sort of like, oh, it's just, it's how we choose to perceive their looks. It's a massive sort of like, in that moment, you have a choice. And the only thing you can control is how you react and how you take on the information. If you take it on in a negative way, it hurts you. It doesn't hurt that other person.
Yeah.
So that's when you have the power to choose, to empower yourself, like you have done every single time. Like, I'm not going to talk about it anymore, but I'm going to own it. And I think it's incredible, babe, that you learned that so young and you've been able to just live it. You've been amazing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that perceiving what people were thinking of me was a reflection of what I was thinking of me in my mind. So when I decided, like, if I keep thinking this of myself, I'm going to behave this way outwardly. I realized that from a really young age. Yeah. I knew that if I'm going to keep thinking this of me, I'm going to be projecting that, like, literally to the world. And I could see my projections of hurt and pain affecting the people that I love, my family. And that broke my heart more. Yeah. Way, way more than what could ever happen to me. So I chose to change. I chose to come back to me. And then when I did that, everything else just transformed. I didn't care what people think, thought, looked at. I just owned it. I dealt with it in the best way I could. And then as I've gotten older and become more in touch with who I am as a person, you know, affirmations have never stopped from my loved ones and people that are around me. You know, you're telling me, you know, you're beautiful and this and that. So obviously that's helped build my confidence back up. But it's not all on external, it's also on me. It's what I talk, it's my self-talk to me. And I'm grateful for my scars. I learned to now love them, from going to wanting to hurt myself even more, you know, physically, and screaming that I hate my scars, they're ugly, I want them gone, to I love my scars, I love my body, this is who I am, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And you know, I honestly wouldn't. I love every part of me, every scar, every part of me. And yeah.
I just want to just to highlight something that you said that from my own experience is so, so important. You know, when you were saying, when I was that age, when I was younger, it was so important to me that I didn't hurt the people around me. And that almost was enough of a big, strong intention inside you that it helped you shift from not looking at yourself and kind of like how you thought about yourself to I am doing this, I am changing for the greater good. I am chasing something that, yeah, at the time was to help someone else and maybe for somebody else's benefit, but in the end that benefit was actually for you. And I think that is something that I found that is so powerful and so important whenever you're going through anything like this, is to have that powerful reason that you want to get to the other side, that you want to change. And I think without that, it's so hard, because you do just stay the way you are because you have no reason to move forwards. You have no reason to change. And having your family, or like a reason for me, it was my dad bought me a brand new bike, and I knew how much my dad loved biking. So at that time, I was like, I have to get better. I have to be able to walk. I have to be able to ride that bike so I can actually have that love from my father and have that time with him. And that was the catalyst to my healing and my sort of change to stop sitting in that
Incredible.
in that kind of like, oh, I can't do this, like, oh no, like thinking about me. And I think for anybody watching this, that's something that they should consider if they have a child, to find something that they love beyond themselves, that they can anchor onto, that will help them make that change and that shift. Because sometimes it's so much easier to do something great for somebody else, and then later on you'll come back and make sure that you're okay. But it's that first little change and that first little shift to prove to yourself that you can get better that needs to happen. Because otherwise we can so easily lose ourselves in our own minds and our own sort of pain and hurt. Having that reason.
And like, we had every right to be, you know, sad and down. Like, definitely, you know, I think that I was well within my right to be the way I was. You know, like I had just gone through so much. Like, no one was making me feel like, everyone was so patient with me, and everyone was just taking me for where I was at, and like being so understanding. But I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't. I realized that is a choice. And so, like, you know, option one, you stay here reliving the pain. It's happened, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. Option two, you know, you fix up, you dust yourself off, and you keep going. And they're choosing the other, you know, the latter, it can lead to really great things. And it's never held me back in life. It's never held me back. I think when I got older, I was really nervous about having a boyfriend and explaining that if they saw a scar on my body. And I'm very grateful that everyone that has, you know, every relationship that I've had in my life has always loved me for exactly how my body is, and never ever made me feel any kind of a way. You know?
I think that's also because you did the hard work and you loved yourself and you loved your scars as well. And you already had that strength inside you to be like, no, I love this part of me. If you don't love this part of me, you're not for me.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And also friendships. All my friendships were just so there was so much love around me that I needed to just let it all come in. But I had such a wall up. I didn't trust the world, didn't trust the world. I was like, I couldn't be me because the world is gonna
The world's gonna hurt you.
Yeah. And
you lose control.
Yeah. And back then there was no explanation as to why. It was such a freak accident. It was like the logic just wasn't there. Why did this happen to me? Why me? And then mum was like reminding me that there are people out there that have gone through so much worse, and I am incredibly lucky to be alive. And so that in itself as well made me become stronger and made me like, realize, this could have been so much worse. I'm so grateful that I can walk, that I can breathe, and that I am healthy and well, and I've survived this. That is an absolute miracle. And I'm just keep moving forward.
Yeah, just keep moving forward.
Yeah,
that is absolutely superb, my darling. Like,
thank you
so much. Would you mind just sort of like giving a little, first of all, a little message to anybody that's kind of going through what you went through or something like that, and what you would have loved to have just told yourself back then? And then if you could just share maybe some of the things that you do either on a daily, weekly basis, just to keep building yourself and keep kind of checking in with yourself, because it's not, healing and getting stronger is not just like, I'm over it, let's do it. It is something that constantly just needs to be checked in. So I would love it if you could share sort of some of your insights with that.
Yeah, sure. So I think that because this happened when I was a child, I would really like, I think you and me have spoken about this as well. Like, I think it would be, because I was a child, and so my memory is a little bit fragmented as to like what, exactly the detail of what happened. And it's all my perception from a child's mind. Everything I speak of now as an adult is how it felt from a child's mind and what it was like for me. But, I think that, and I understand that with hospitals and medical procedures, there are procedures and protocols and timings, and if there's a time for surgery, it has to happen, and But I think that there probably needed to be a bit more support on families and younger children that are going through something that's invasive of their bodies, no matter what age they're at. Like, I don't feel like what I explained from when I had to go in for the surgery, I wasn't ready for that, and being forced into that was very traumatic in itself, on top of the trauma that I was already going through. So it would have been nice to have like
had the time and space to be able to kind of explore that a little bit more, rather than kind of being pushed into more and more trauma states.
I think more time, if time is available, more time to emotionally support what's going on with somebody emotionally. Like, the system was very focused on what's happening, like the physical thing, but there's so much emotional stuff that comes with that needs to be looked after and loved and nurtured.
If there was anything that you would have told your younger self just to kind of help them come through it?
I would have probably told younger me that although this is painful, trust and know that God is with me, and God is going to keep me safe, and that there's a higher power that is protecting me and keeping me safe. Because I think if I had been sort of more in tune with that at that time, I would have felt a bit more trusting and safe as to what was going on around me. But because I was in this real fight flight state, high stress state, I was just in a mentality of wanting to protect myself. So I was in fight mode. I was just wanting to protect me and my body, and I didn't trust anyone. But if I could go back to my younger self, I would remind my younger self that God is with me and he's protecting me, and it's going to be okay. And that's what's helped lead me through life, even to this point as an adult, is knowing that there is a higher power there are angels, there is God that's always guiding and leading you, and to connect to that source in whatever way that looks for anyone, whatever it is that you believe in. If you believe in the universe, higher power, whoever that person is that you pray to, don't ever give up connecting to source. And now that I'm an adult, I understand that there is a meaning and a purpose for everything. I didn't understand that then as a child. I was like, why me? Like, why this awful thing to me? But like, after the growth that you go through, like now as an adult, like I was protected by God, and I was guided and led to where I am today, which is a much, I've come out the other end, so.
Amy, I think that's just unbelievable, and that was such a beautiful almost hour. Like, I was captivated from the start. Like, darling, thank you so much
Oh no,
for
thank you.
sharing this insane story. And I know it is, I connect with so many parents that are having difficulty with their child right now, that this is just going to give them a glimmer of hope and help them understand a little bit more from that child's side of what's happening. So just give them the insight that I hope will help them, support them as they grow as well. Because exactly what you said, there is just not that emotional support out there. I'm actually just about to have an interview with the only psychologist in the whole of the UK who is qualified to deal with medical trauma, because
Whoa.
because it's just not it's not something that the medical profession really wants to talk about, obviously, because again, it goes back to a blame game of like, well, they believe that they're the ones that cause it, so they don't want. And I'm just like, it's from people that are coming from the childhood medical trauma, it's not their fault. You know what I mean? It's the system and everything like that, and just this lack of support afterwards that we can aim to do it. So yeah, Amy, that was riveting and just incredibly powerful, and I cannot thank you enough.